Hello, my name's Ben, we're the Beard Guys, and welcome to another episode of What Can It Earn, a series in which I track my silver earnings over 25 battles in different tanks on World of Tanks console with no ops turned on or any platooning, and I'll share with you the highlights of those games and a summary of what kind of silver you might expect that tank to earn. Normally these will come out every Friday, but since the KV-5 is on sale at the moment only until Friday the 4th of December, and I happen to own one already, I thought I'd get this one out early to give you guys a few days to think about buying it. So the KV-5 is a tier 8 Soviet heavy tank that is a bit of a one-trick pony, relying on its heavy armor and high amount of hit points to get it through a battle. It has the benefit of not being as slow as you might expect for a heavily armoured tank, making it a pretty effective vehicle for ramming, and it can also do a nice amount of alpha damage for a very cheap shell cost, which combined with its good rate of fire and therefore DPM makes it pretty good credit earner. It also gets preferential matchmaking, meaning it only sees up to tier 9 tanks. Its downsides are its subpar penetration and accuracy, and the massive glaring weak spot on the front that's normally referred to as R2-D2. So that's a very quick review of the KV-5. Let's take a look at the highlights from those 25 games, and then we'll jump into the summary of the silver that it earned. So welcome back, hopefully you enjoyed those highlights. Now it's time to have a little look at those silver earnings. Now make sure you keep in mind that these earnings are going to differ depending on your skill level in this tank relative to my own. So if you think you're a bit better than I am in this tank, you can expect to make a bit more, and if you think you're not quite as good, you'll probably make a little bit less. I've tried to be completely honest. I've kept the amazing games, I've kept the terrible derpy fail games where I did 200 damage, so I think that should all balance out pretty nicely and give us some pretty useful data to have a look at. So let's jump in. So the KV-5 was actually pretty fun to drive. If you're able to get yourself in a nice side scraping or reverse side scraping position, you can bounce a hell of a lot of shots in it. It can be a bit hit and miss as to whether you can get away with sitting in the open. It really depends on if the enemy knows your weak spots. If they don't, then you can have some ridiculous games, and if they do, then you can die very quickly. So let's have a look at the silver. It made just over 80,000 a game on average with a premium account, which is pretty much the same as I made in the Tiger 88, and about 10k on average more than I made in the IS-6. Which is unsurprising given the fact that the IS-6 standard ammo costs 4 times as much as either of those tanks, with only a small gain in alpha. The most silver it did in a single match was 122,000, and the average silver I made per hour of tank use was 652k, which again is almost identical to the Tiger 88. I think it's also worth looking quickly at the fact that the Tiger 88 video, I had very poor luck with teams and only managed a 36% win rate, compared with 72% in the KV-5, even though both my average damage and assisted damage were higher in the YAG-88. So I think it's fair to say that the Tiger could easily have made 85 to 90k on average per game if I'd had a more normal win rate. So let's have a quick look at my battle performance. I managed around 1900 average damage over those 25 games, which is 300 less than the Tiger 88 and almost identical to the IS-6. But due to the cheap shell cost, it made a lot more silver than the IS-6. That amount of damage was a little over my global stats for the KV-5, which was good, although I've only played 70 or so battles, so that data hasn't really leveled out yet. Comparing my performance here to the overall performance of the KV-5 by World of Tanks console players globally, I managed to get significantly more than the average damage and win rate, so very pleased with that. Now obviously this data is pretty specific to what I'm going to do, but you can have a look at the average damage I've done and the win rate and compare that maybe to your own average damage, and it might give you a little bit of a rough idea of the relative silver income you might be able to make in this tank. So are there any other interesting points from that data? Well, unsurprisingly it blocked the most damage so far of any tank I've checked, doing 1783 block damage on average per game, or a total of 44,500 total blocks over 25 battles. The next highest one that I've checked so far was the YAG-88, which did about 1200 block per game, so it's a pretty big increase on that. It's also the first tank I've tested that's managed to hit the 2 million total silver mark, making a total of 2,005,920 silver in all of those 25 games. Keep in mind that with ops turned on, you're going to make a lot more. So is it a good silver earner? Yes it is. Pretty much all of the tier 8 premiums though are good silver earners, but this one seems to sit slightly above those with expensive ammo like the IS-6, although I think most players would find that the IS-6 is probably more fun to drive, and the difference really is fairly negligible. Personally I like this tank a lot because I like the weird tanks in the game that do things differently, and having a tank that looks hideous like this, you can ram people for anywhere up to 1000 damage, or you can drive backwards at the enemy, is always going to be a good laugh. Especially when you drive backwards at them, they try to flank you, and then realise they've now driven round in front of you. It's one of those tanks that relies on your enemy's ignorance of it to give you the best games it can. Is it worth the money? Well, it's cheap as far as tier 8 premiums go, being on par with the Super Pershing, and it's currently on sale for 6,950 gold in store, only until the 4th of December. It's also a rare tank, so it isn't often on sale, and that might appeal to some. And that also helps the advantage of other players' ignorance towards its weak spots. So you might find at the moment you might get wrecked in it pretty badly, but give it 3 or 4 months when people have kind of forgotten about the KV-5, there won't be many around, and there'll be less people around who know about its weak spots. Personally, I think the amount of silver it makes is very impressive for the relatively low price compared to some of the other tier 8 premiums in the game. If you'd like to see all the data from these 25 games, then there is a link in the description to a forum topic in which I will share the full set of results for you to take a look at and discuss if you wish. So thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and let us know what you thought in the comments, and that'll let us know that we should keep on making these. There'll be a new episode of this hopefully out every Friday, so make sure you're subscribed. My name's Ben, we're the Beard Guys, and I'll see you next time.